Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Audio Tools Explained. This is going to be our last one for now, covering the modulation effects. Last week we did the flanger, week before that we did the phaser, and this week we're going to be going over the chorus, which is another effect that is very, very similar to the flanger and how it operates. As you can see, I've got my test session up here. I've got the chorus and the flanger effects loaded up on both this violin here and this electric bass. We're going to be using those as examples today. As always, I'm just going to play back this violin on its raw audio before we get into explaining too much about what this effect does. And so we can hear the raw audio, and then I'm going to play it back with the effect on. So this is it without any sort of processing. And I'll play our electric bass here as well to get a sort of better reference. Those are pretty generic, out of the box. I haven't done anything to them. Pretty simple MIDI mock-up. It literally took me like 5 minutes to write out. Now I'm going to turn this chorus effect on. Now, a chorus effect is actually very, very similar to a flanger effect in what it does to your audio. However, the end outcome is slightly different, and it produces a different effect in your sound. So I'm just going to open up this chorus effect here, make sure the mix is set to 100, and we'll give it something to work with here and play this violin back. So that was with it at 1/8 interval to my tempo. I'm actually going to slow it down a little bit as well to about 1 bar length, and we'll hear what that does. So this is it with it mixed in at 100%. This is not how this effect is traditionally used or how its intended purpose to use might be. Normally when you're using modulation effects such as the chorus, the flanger, or the phaser effect, you'll have it mixed down somewhere between 10 to 80%. You normally don't want to go really high, or you'll get what we experienced before, where with the lower rate it kind of started going in and out of tune, and with the higher rate it was just really wobbly sounding. Of course, you can use those higher mix rates to give you sort of a more of effect sound if you're looking to create sound effects, or if you're trying to just play around with the sound and be creative. I do encourage it. Just always be creative. But if you're using it in like a musical mixing scenario, or you're modulating something musical, I generally tone it down a bit. Don't put it at like 100% unless you're blending it in with a few other things and it's kind of an effect again. But if it's like a forward front instrument, I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting it 100%. So, like I said, the chorus and the flanger effects are both very, very similar. If I pull up this stock chorus effect that Nuendo comes with alongside the stock chorus effect, you can see that they share already a large set of similarities. They both have this big sync knob with the rate. They both have a delay. The flanger has a feedback option, whereas the chorus has a width, and they both have this spatial knob. And then, of course, they both have the filters. The flanger has the extra options for the low range and the high range, which we explained last week. The chorus does not have these options. So as we explored last week, what the flanger does is it takes your signal and it delays it a certain length to kind of produce out of phase effect, where some frequencies will be cut and others will be boosted. So what the chorus does is it does the exact same thing, except a flanger will typically delay your signal between 1 millisecond to 10 milliseconds on general. Of course, the variety of length available might be different depending on your plugin, but the delay option for your flanger will generally be very, very short. It won't be that long. Comparing the flanger here to the chorus option I have up beside it, the flanger goes from 0.1 millisecond to 10 millisecond, and the chorus starts at 10 millisecond where the flanger ends and goes all the way up to 30. the reason for this is that the flanger will delay the signal a short amount of time to give you those phasing effects where certain frequencies are boosted and others are cut, etc., and gives you that really, really cool effect. The purpose of a chorus, however, is different. A chorus is typically used in music to give you the sound of multiple voices sounding out at once, as the name suggests. You can put one instrument into a chorus and it will modulate it to sound more like you're playing 3, 4, 5 instruments, what have you. It'll sound a bit more interesting, it'll sound a little bit more organic maybe. It'll just give you those extra options. Now, the reason the chorus has such long delay times as opposed to the flanger is to create this effect. If it had shorter times and delay, it would just create a phasing effect like the flanger does. However, the chorus, while still producing a slight phasing effect, it also produces the side effect of it sounding a lot like there's multiple voices happening. Basically, what we're looking at here with the chorus, we'll do a quick walkthrough of the knobs here before we play around with it anymore, is we have our big rate knob in the middle. As with the flanger and the phaser, you'll typically have an option to sync it or not sync it. This particular chorus has an option to change the LFO modulation between a sine wave and a saw wave. It can be a unique tool to play around with, changes the sound just a little, makes it either a little more smooth or a little more sharp. It also has your standard low and a high filter that a lot of plugins come with. It'll also have this regular mixed one. No matter what plugin you're working with, you will have this mix here and you will have some sort of rate control. More often than not, you will also have delay control, unless it's a sort of one-off plugin in which it's like, hey, you bought this plugin and you only have a delay of 15 milliseconds, whatever. So like the flanger, what the chorus does is it takes a signal, lets the original one through, and then duplicates the signal and delays it back and plays it back with some cool modulation going on. So whereas the flanger might duplicate the original signal back once, depending on the chorus plugin that you have, it will actually create between like 1 to 2 to 3, 4 or 5 duplicates. It all depends on the plugin. What it is just duplicating that track a few times. And when you duplicate that audio a few times, you already will have the sense of it being a few more players or a few more instruments playing back the same thing. However, it also helps model the organic aspect of it, where if you have multiple people singing or multiple people playing an instrument or whatever, there will be a slight delay between when each individual instrument plays that note. And that is what the delay function does on the chorus. Between 10 to 30 milliseconds, you'll be setting that to kind of determine how much chorus will be produced. It will emphasize the amount of the chorus effect produced. Basically, the longer the delay, it will sound kind of like the more voices are playing or the more instruments are playing. The width, similar to other width options we've explored, all the width option does is if it's at 100%, the signal outputted from the chorus will be 100% stereo. There will be no mono information. If we turn it all the way down to 0, it is completely mono, one signal right down the middle, no stereo information at all. Again, we have this spatial knob here. Our spatial knob does the same thing as it does in the other plugin, the flanger, as well as the phaser. If you are working with a different DAW and don't have this plugin, or if you're working with third-party plugins from an effects producer, you may not have a spatial option and you may not have a width option. So always play around with the knobs that your plugin has. Learn about them, read the manuals, use your ears, listen to the before and after with the mix cranked up. That'll really, really help you understand your plugins. I'm gonna play back this violin with something that would be more of a reasonable chorus blend in. I'm going to sync it up to maybe half a bar, and I'm turning the mix to like 50%, and we can hear kind of what this effects is doing. So a bypass, this is the original violin signal. And now we're going to add in the chorus, and this will sound like there are a couple more voices playing. It won't sound natural, it won't sound completely organic, but it helps modulate that. Now, with the mix turned up as much as it still sounds like it's just a whole bunch of detuned instruments, and it might sound that way with the violin. Let's transition over to the bass and get our settings set up so that we can hear another example. You can see with the little tweaking of the settings, it sounds a bit better on the bass than it did with the violin. Using a chorus on lower register instruments, you always have to be careful because you can end up muddying up those lower frequencies and creating some problems with your end mix if you aren't careful. But considering you're not actually creating any new low end, you're just replicating what's already there and processing it a little bit. Using a chorus on your low end isn't necessarily a bad idea. It can in fact produce really great results like what it did with this electric bass here. So we're going to play around with the settings a little bit more. We'll use this electric bass because it just sounds a bit better than the violin. As you can see, I'm just going to turn the mix up a bit more. The delay kind of controls what the chorus produces in terms of how many voices. It's really replicating the old audio as we explained earlier. But as I play with the delay here, you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. You can hear how when I was really way down low, there wasn't really a lot happening, not in terms of, it maybe sounds like there's an extra bass in there. But as I went up and up, it sounded like there were more instruments. You always have to be careful with chorus because as you heard when I was going all the way up, it sounded like there was a lot of detuning going on and a lot of out of tune sound being produced. So you do have to be careful with that. As you heard as well, when I kind of went down into the kind of mid-range between like 15 to 25 millisecond range, it actually started sounding quite pleasing. It sounded like a really creative effect you can play around with. I'm going to leave it here as we play around with the width. Again, the width is just mono, stereo, or somewhere in between. This is mono, going up to stereo, and then kind of in the middle. You can hear as well as when I was playing with the width, when you go up higher, it'll detune it more. This is something that some chorus plugins will use in their width features if they have one, where they're not actually fully taking out the mono signal, or at least that's not the only thing they're doing. Sometimes they will also detune the voices to give an extra sense of width and size and more instruments being played. So you do want to be careful with the width option because it also may affect your pitch. We're going to leave this around 30%. As you can see, that's quite pleasing. And then we have the spatial feature, which at 0, going up to 100, as you can see, similar to the width knob or a stereo knob, it kind of just makes the sound wider, gives a little bit more presence, and when you turn it down, it makes it a bit smaller, tighter, more mono. It's in this particular chorus plugin, it can be thought of as a fine tune of your mono to stereo signal, and it helps modulate the sound just a bit more. So that's really it for the chorus plugin, guys. I have good news for everyone waiting for another orchestral redo because we will be having one come out on the 22nd. So next week we're going to be starting with an beginning episode on compression, because that is a very, very interesting subject, and I can't wait to go through it with you guys. And then after that, we'll be having another orchestral redo coming out, and then after that, we'll have some more compression videos, and we're going to have a breakdown of whatever orchestration we pick. So I hope you guys found this helpful and informative, and I hope you enjoyed it. As always, give a sub below, give me a like, comment on what walkthroughs you'd like to see in the future. I'm always happy to help. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.